Welcome to the Scars Institute Exploration Podcast. Today's podcast is Abstinence for Scam Victims, a Requirement for Healing. This episode was written by Professor Tim McGuinness, Ph.D., created by the certified professionals at the Scars Institute, and presented by our Scars Institute AI hosts. This podcast introduces important information to help you learn and better understand about scams and fraud, scammers, and cybercrimes. But even more, they are about helping scam survivors learn how to overcome the trauma they cause and how to embark on their journey of recovery. Our Scars Institute podcast series helps victims and survivors better understand how these crimes happened to them and how to address the emotional and psychological challenges that result from their experience. We hope it helps you learn to recover and be safe online. Make sure that you subscribe to our channel to hear all of our podcasts and enlightening videos. And remember that we are here to help you to recover from these experiences. And now, abstinence for scam victims, a requirement for healing.
Welcome to the Scars Institute Exploration Podcast. Today we're getting into a really critical topic: recovery. Specifically, what happens right after you've been betrayed by a relationship scam.
It's such a complex area.
It is. And whether you've been through a romance scam or one of these pig butchering schemes, that road to healing is, well, it's tough, and the stakes are incredibly high.
They are. And our focus today is all about navigating that very early stage. We're drawing from Abstinence for Scam Victims, a Requirement for Healing.
That's the 2026 edition from the Scars Institute Scams Now magazine.
Yeah, written by Professor Tim McGuinness, Ph.D. We're really zeroing in on a strategy that, can be tough for victims to hear at first. It's this principle of abstinence.
And this exploration is really for you, the listener. If you're trying to move forward, but you just feel so vulnerable, so overwhelmed, maybe even desperate to feel that connection again, this is for you.
Definitely. The core idea from the source material is that the time after the scam is, maybe surprisingly, the most dangerous time.
More dangerous.
Yes. Because that betrayal leaves victims so incredibly vulnerable. Scammers know this. They actually look for people who've just been exploited because, well, they're easier to manipulate again.
That's a chilling thought. The trauma itself makes you a better target.
It does. And so the core message we're exploring is that real long-term recovery requires this conscious, intentional pause, what the source calls abstinence.
Okay, so let's unpack that. To really get why this pause is so essential, we have to look at what's going on with a victim right after the scam ends.
Exactly. The source describes victims dealing with, massive betrayal, trauma, grief, just profound devastation. But here's the part that often surprises people. They're also considered cognitively impaired for a while, sometimes for the first few months, maybe even up to a year.
That's a heavy term, cognitively impaired.
Yeah.
Let's break that down. It's not about intelligence.
Not at all. It has nothing to do with how smart you are. It means the parts of your brain that handle long-term planning, risk assessment, impulse control, they're basically offline.
So they're hampered by the trauma response.
Exactly. You're operating from a survival state. You might know intellectually, going back on a dating site is risky, but your brain just can't translate that knowledge into protective action.
So my filter for threats is just gone.
It's drastically reduced. And that's the real consequence. You're just not in a psychological state to make healthy relationship choices. And the vulnerability isn't just about another scammer.
Right. The source mentions this. It's also about real people.
Real people who are, say, abusers or extreme narcissists.
Yeah.
People who are drawn to that kind of vulnerability. They see someone in pain who's looking for a savior, and they capitalize on it.
So the danger crosses from the criminal world right into the regular dating pool. Every new person is a potential high risk because you can't properly enforce your own boundaries.
The whole risk equation has shifted. And that leads us to defining what abstinence really means here. It's a concept they've borrowed from addiction recovery.
Okay, so what does it entail for a scam victim?
It's really twofold. The first part is pretty straightforward, but it's essential. It means avoiding all contact with the scammer.
No more engagement.
None. No responding. No trying to get closure. Just stop.
And the second part, which I think is the much harder part.
It is. It's refraining from looking for a new romantic partner. Or even, introducing any new emotionally significant strangers into your life for a period of time.
That's the protective barrier. And the data from the Scars Institute is pretty stark on this.
It's very striking. Professor McGuinness emphasizes that going back to dating within the first say 9 months, is just overwhelmingly risky.
And the vast majority who do that.
The vast majority are scammed again. Or they end up in really unhealthy, abusive relationships, which just compounds the original trauma.
9 months. That's a long time. I can imagine a listener feeling a lot of resistance to that idea, especially if they're feeling incredibly lonely right now.
That resistance is completely understandable, but it's also a warning sign. The source does point out there are very rare exceptions, like SCAR's board member Debbie Montgomery Johnson.
Debbie's the anomaly.
A huge anomaly. For almost everyone else, rushing is just fundamentally incompatible with how long the brain and the psyche actually need to heal.
So if abstinence is the requirement, let's get into why it's so hard. Why is the pull to rebound, to jump back in, so powerful?
Well, those impulses are coming directly from that impaired mental state we talked about. It's all rooted in desperation. The brain is just trying to find a shortcut out of all that pain.
The source lists a few key drivers. Loneliness and isolation seem like the most obvious ones.
Of course. You lose this intense, albeit fake, connection, and the silence that's left behind can feel unbearable.
And that loneliness then gets tangled up with a desire for validation, right?
An overwhelming desire. The scammer made them feel chosen, worthy. When that's revealed as a lie, your sense of self-worth just evaporates, so you crave someone new to prove you're still lovable.
And what about the cravings? Victims report these intense emotional cravings.
Yes, and that's a key point. It's not really love they're craving. It's the feeling of closeness. The scammer manufacturer. They want that dopamine hit back.
That neurochemical spike.
Exactly. The brain doesn't know the difference between real intimacy and, expertly manipulated conditioning. It just knows what made it feel good temporarily.
And the last one is just seeking normalcy, using a new relationship as a distraction.
And this is where we see the biggest problem. Rebounding isn't about being ready for a healthy partnership. It's an avoidance tactic. It's a negative coping mechanism.
Okay, let's break that down. Why is it considered avoidance?
Because it lets you bypass the hard work, the grief processing, rebuilding your identity. That stuff is excruciating. By jumping into a new relationship, you're basically outsourcing your emotional regulation to someone else.
So you're swapping internal work for external distraction.
You're living another fantasy to avoid the painful reality. And that means the trauma, the pain, it never actually gets processed. It just gets buried.
And it stays locked in your nervous system, waiting.
And there are practical consequences, too. Financial ones. Even if you don't get scammed again, a new relationship is a huge distraction from critical post-scam tasks.
You mean like dealing with the fallout taxes, bankruptcy, legal action?
All of it. Those decisions require a clear, focused mind. If you're consumed by the anxiety and excitement of a new person, you can't give them mental energy to those serious, life-altering decisions. You need clarity, and new relationships, at first, create fog.
Which brings us to a really compelling part of the source material. It argues that abstinence isn't just a good idea. It's a neurobiological necessity, a physical requirement for your brain.
This is where the science really backs up the strategy. Relationship scams work so well because they manipulate the brain's core systems.
The reward, attachment, and threat systems.
Right. They use what's called intermittent reinforcement. You get these intense highs of affection, then a crisis, then affection again. It's a powerful addictive conditioning. It floods your brain with dopamine and oxytocin, bonding you to the source of your own distress.
So when the scam ends, that whole system just collapses. It's not just feeling sad, it's a physical state of dysregulation.
Exactly. Dopamine plummets. Your threat system, the amygdala, is on high alert. Your brain is basically screaming for relief, not for rational thought. And that imbalance is the cognitive fog we talked about. It's what drives impulsive decisions.
And this connects directly to trauma bonding. How does that work when the scammer is gone?
Well, the trauma bond is the attachment that was formed under all that manipulation and crisis. So even though the scammer is gone, the neurological wiring that craves that intensity, it's still there.
So you understand it was a fraud, but your brain still wants that feeling back.
Your lizard brain does, yeah. The craving isn't a sign that you're ready for love. It's a withdrawal symptom.
And abstinence is the intervention that breaks that cycle.
Precisely. By forcing the brain to actually process the loss without replacing the stimulus, you give its regulatory systems time to stabilize and rewire. You're teaching your nervous system that relief has to come from inside, not from someone else.
That makes so much sense. So let's look at the risks of skipping that pause. The source says premature dating often acts as a form of dissociation.
It's a form of self-medication, really. The new relationship gives you temporary relief, but it suppresses the grief and the shame. And trauma doesn't heal when it's suppressed. It just waits.
And it comes back later with more intensity?
Almost guaranteed. We also see what's called attachment regression. Someone who was very secure before the scam can become incredibly anxious in their attachment style afterwards.
Seeking constant reassurance or looking for a rescuer.
Yes. They look for dependency, not partnership. And they attach very quickly to anyone who seems dominant or stable, even if that person is unhealthy for them. Their boundaries are just too weak.
And we can't forget about shame, that quiet, powerful feeling of being foolish or defective.
Shame is a relentless engine. The victim tries to disprove that feeling by getting external validation. If someone new loves me, then I must not be a fool.
But the research shows that doesn't actually heal the shame.
It does the opposite. It ties your self-worth to someone else's approval, making you more dependent and more fragile. Healing shame is an inside job. It requires self-compassion, not a new partner.
So really, this entire pause is designed to allow the nervous system to recalibrate and to begin the most important phase of all, identity reconstruction.
That's the end goal. Rebuilding self-trust, restoring your own agency, and figuring out who you are separate from any romantic role. When you do that, you can enter a relationship from a place of wholeness, not need.
Which is a powerful way to get into our final section. Viewing abstinence as an act of autonomy, not as a punishment.
That distinction is absolutely crucial. If a victim sees this as a punishment, as being banned from love, they'll just resent it and break the rule.
But if you see it as an act of autonomy,
it becomes an intentional choice. You're prioritizing your long-term safety over short-term relief. You are taking back control of your own recovery.
And it's also critical to say, abstinence is not the same as isolation.
Oh, that's a key clarification. Complete isolation is dangerous. Recovery requires safe, non-romantic relationships. Friends, family, structured peer support.
So you're avoiding intense new entanglements, not people altogether.
Right. You need to be doing things that regulate your nervous system, like walking, structured routines, professional guidance. It's about creating a safe container for healing.
So how does someone know when they're ready? When that abstinence period can safely end? It's not just about the calendar, is it?
No, it's about function. The source gives a kind of checklist. You're emotionally stable without feeling that urgency or desperation. You can tolerate being lonely without panicking.
You can evaluate risk again. You can enforce boundaries.
And critically, you can talk about the scam without being completely flooded by emotion. You've integrated the experience.
That feels like the only reliable measure. Readiness is defined by regulation and choice, not by urgency and neediness.
That is the central requirement. You have to be in a position of personal strength where you recognize that companionship is wonderful, but you are fundamentally whole and complete on your own.
This has been such a necessary look at why the strategy of abstinence is so critical. The source puts it so well. Healing the grief first protects future intimacy. The goal of the pause is clarity, resilience, and rebuilding that self-trust.
And if you are going through this recovery right now, please know you are not alone. There is structured support out there. We really encourage you to visit www.scamvictimsupport.org to learn more about what you need to know.
And you can also sign up for the free and private SCARS Institute Scam Victims and Survivors Support and Recovery Community. That's at www.scarscommunity.org.
Thank you so much for joining us for this XR Institute Exploration podcast.
And leave you with one final thought. If seeking validation from a new partner is driven by that feeling of being defective, what small internal practice, something totally separate from other people, like a journal entry or a self-compassion exercise, can you commit to starting today to begin rebuilding your own self-worth? The answer always starts and resides within you.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. On behalf of the whole SCARS Institute team, we hope this has helped to provide a deeper understanding of this important topic. Remember to subscribe or follow us to stay informed of all our articles, publications, and videos as they are released. Please tell us what you think of our podcasts by leaving us your comments. Your feedback is how we know if we are helping. If you have been victimized by a scam, the SCARS Institute can help you. To begin, visit scamvictimsupport.org. If you are ready to join a SCARS Institute support and recovery group, visit scarscommunity.org/register to enroll in the SCARS Institute Scam Survivors School's next class. Visit scarseducation.org. All SCARS Institute Victim Survivors services are completely free. We understand what you have gone through and we can help. Contact the SCARS Institute today.